Hi.
Good morning, everybody. I request Chairman to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhanumati, and good morning, everyone. Distinguished guests, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the Virtual Conference, Global Supply Chain Summit 2021, with a real focus on reimagination of real-time visibility and resilient customer centricity, new realities of supply chain. We are living in a very disrupted world, very different world than what we were living, say, 15 months ago. And therefore, everything is changed around us, and supply chain has got totally disrupted. Today, we'll have a very good conference, and we have a great panel of speakers in the inaugural session, as well as coming sessions over the course of the day today. I consider it my privilege to welcome Mr. Saurabh Goyal, Managing Director, Justa India Supply Chain. Justa is the supply chain partner of Foxconn Technology Group, a Fortune 30 organization. Prior to this, Saurabh founded ThinkLink Supply Chain Services, where he worked with leading companies in helping them optimize their supply chain, especially with regards to warehousing, material flow, and automation. He has a keen interest in using technology and automation to drive supply chain value creation. Let me also welcome Mr. Anil Arora, founder and managing director of Atos Digilog. Mr. Anil Arora is founding partner at Atos. Atos is a result-driven business growth accelerator providing capital and advisory services to logistics and warehousing firms, MSME, technology, and early-stage businesses. Anil recognized an opportunity in logistics services way back in the 90s. And after having set up multiple large-scale warehousing facilities, he founded MJ Logistics Services Limited in 2005. He went on to build MJ LSL into a leading logistics and cold chain services provider in India, catering to reputed national and international companies. In 2018, Anil exited MJ LSL as managing director, along with his institutional investors who brought in capital to scale and pioneer many firsts in the logistics industry. It is also my pleasure to welcome Hanish Yadav, partner McKinsey & Company. Mr. Hanish is a partner with McKinsey & Company, and he advises companies in transport and logistics sector on driving growth strategies, large-scale transformation, cost optimization, network design, and operations. Mr. Hanish has over 12 years of experience in this space, having worked in India, Africa, Middle East, and Australia. Hanish has also served as Chief of Staff to the Union Minister of Railways and Commerce and Industry of India for 3 years, during which he drove significant policy breakthroughs and led strategic performance initiatives. His recent work includes leading a grow to IPO transformation for a prominent third-party logistics company in India, which a focus on transforming the India business, defining an acquisition strategy and roadmap and IPO readiness, building new business for an aftermarket company in the auto sector, and defining the growth blueprint for an air express company in India. I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Aditya Gupta, Chief Operating Officer, Supply Chain Management Center, IIM Bangalore. Dr. Aditya Gupta is the Chief Operation Officer at the Supply Chain Management Center of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. He comes with over 24 years of diverse experience in the areas of supply chain management, general management, finance, and sales, of which he spent 23 years in the corporate world and about a year in teaching. He's worked with leading corporates like the TVS Group, Tata Group, Virgin Group, Moser Bayer, Jindal Group, SR Group in various managerial and senior leadership roles. Welcome, Aditya Gupta. Let me now introduce CII Institute of Logistics. Many of you may know it, but still it's customary to talk about CII Institute of Logistics. The CII Center of Excellence across India are supporting the Indian industry to various services on key areas for India's sustainable growth. To address the need of sharpening India Inc.'s competitive edge through better logistics and supply chain practices, CII Institute of Logistics, CIL, was established as a center of supply chain and logistics. The institute is currently engaged in international activities like senior management training programs for the United Nations, certified warehouse Kaizen practitioner program in association with Japan Institute of Logistics Systems, Japan, international certificate programs in collaboration with Singapore Logistics Association and the Logistics Academy, Singapore. The institute also completed extensive research on skills, competencies, and training situation in India under the guidance of World Bank. There are many events that are upcoming, digital events. One is the Automotive Supply Chain on the 12th of November, and the most awaited and prestigious Scale Awards Edition 8 on 9th and 10th December 2021. About this conference, the global landscape has fundamentally shifted, accelerating the need and desire for supply chains to broaden their mission and deliver competitive advantage. In response, companies are expanding their horizons, embracing not only reimagining profitability, but the business purpose and real-time visibility to maximize the end-to-end supply chain productivity for organizational success. We are living in the age of resilient customer centricity, of supply chain excellence, and of mega trends, namely digitization, diversity and inclusion, and sustainability. Where these trends are drivers coalesce, we call it the era of supply chain, a time which offers infinite possibilities to create outcomes that inspire and improve the way we work and live. This conference attempts to derive insights into these three sub-themes: how to reimagine profit in supply chain, how to bring real-time visibility with a focus on logistics supply chain productivity, and how to bring resilient customer centricity in the current pandemic situation with deliberation among the stakeholders. The session would also provide insights into emerging models of engagement, building world-class infrastructure, and nurturing partnership to achieve these three new realities of the supply chain building blocks. I hope the participants in this digital conference will contribute actively in the deliberations and take back valuable points and insight. May I request Mr. Hanish Yadav, partner McKinsey & Company, to deliver his address on current supply chain trends. Over to you, Hanish.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here and speaking in the midst of this forum. Today, I am happy to speak on the topic, which is very close to what I think everyone is talking about on creating the supply chain for the future. Right? I'll take 10-15 minutes to go through some of these slides. Happy to answer questions at the end as you feel like. So look, I think the first message is that the supply chain shocks are actually getting more frequent and more severe, right? And it is not just because not just because of the pandemic, but even before that, this trend was highly visible. If we analyze the data of last 50 to 70 years of the supply chain shocks that have happened, and the supply chain shocks are happening every 3.7 years, and they are lasting about 1 month long, right? So these are significant supply chain shocks happening in global supply chains across the world. And their financial impact is also going through the roof. We estimate that the impact of these shocks is almost about 45 to 50% of 1 year EBITDA of a company across a decade. Right? So it's a significant loss that is happening, and because they're happening at a much higher frequency levels. Keep going. Yeah. COVID-19 has, as I was saying, right, it has only heightened the vulnerabilities and leading to significant impact. Like, now talking specifically about COVID-19, the impact on supply chain has been catastrophic, to say the least, right? We've just to name a few sectors, like automotive saw significant line stoppages, which was affecting the supply of cars across the world. You look at apparel sector, just from Bangladesh, orders worth about $1.5 billion were cancelled, leading to distress in a sector which which significantly supports the economy of Bangladesh, right? And the third message is in this environment, I've just named a few sectors. When we interview and speak to the supply chain executives, it's an overwhelming response to say, look, almost 93% of people are saying, look, they want to increase resilience in supply chain. So, this trend has been visible. I think COVID pandemic has just accelerated the change that is happening towards us. Now, to give some sense on how to think of the framework on how supply chain executives can get their heads around, I think the two dimensions to look at are the magnitude of shock and the ability to anticipate. But even if you map them upon impact and ability to anticipate, the recurrence of these events is established, right? So they, as I was saying on the first slide, right, they're happening much more often. This is just a representation of if you go next, Ganesh, and you will realize that some of these sectors are more vulnerable as compared to the other sectors. When we look at like some of the emergency sectors like medical, food, pharmaceuticals are probably less exposed. This is also based on how their supply chains have been established as compared to the other sectors which have heavy dependence on one region versus the other. Just to name a few, right? It's not just the pandemic, right? Even everyone remembers Japan, the 2011 earthquake, which actually shuts down the electronic component supply across the world, right? Incidentally, it also shut down the one of the largest semiconductor factory in the world, which used to supply semiconductors wafers across the world. Then a few years later, this was 2011, like a few years later, you had Thailand, right, where the flooding in Thailand actually impacted the hard drive supplies in the world. And Thailand now manufactures almost 25% of the global supply of hard drives across the world. Right? These are just few of the examples which tell us the regularity and the severity of this. Now, we've spoken about this. What is the impact, right? What is the so what? We estimate, right? This is not a forecast, but it's some rough estimates. If we look at how many of these supply chains will shift because of these factors, and we estimate this could be anywhere between 2.9 to 4.6 trillion dollars of global trade, which is about 16 to 26% of global trade could shift because of these shocks that are happening. And this shift is happening not just because of the enhanced risks that the supply chain executives feel, but it's also then buttressed by the fact that a lot of countries are incentivizing domestic production, right? So there are SOPs being rolled out. There is so much of nationalization thinking that is coming into that. So if you combine all these factors, the impact on supply chains shifting is going to be significant. This is probably for the first time that in the history of mankind that such significant shift is happening across supply chains in such a short period of time. If you go to the next page, now, as we talk about shifts across the supply chains, one of the major things for us to look at is regionalization of supply chains. Very interestingly, right, in 2012, actually regionalization, which means that intra-region trade was actually decreasing, right? And we used to all talk about how globalization is increasing, how inter-region trades is increasing, and how the entire world is becoming very connected, right? But if you look at some of these numbers, like and again to the same point, it's a trend which was before pandemic as well, right? So regionalization has been increasing since 2012, and I think it's only going to go up significantly as we move from here. Now, if you go to the next page, if you now take a focus, all of us are sitting in India. Now, if we zoom into Asia, right, the shifting of these supply chains will happen to a place, right? We know the reasons why the supply chain is shifting. It's shifting because of the risk. It's shifting because of the favorable policies. But where will it shift? It will shift. Typically, supply chains always see where the consumer is, right? And hence, it's an important slide to say, look, Asia today represents 28% of global consumption. It will rise to 40% of global consumption. And hence, the intra-region trade of Asia is one of the most significant change that will going to happen as we go forward. Yeah. So this again is a very interesting chart, right? When we look at if the global consumption in Asia is going to get to 40%, how's the supply side doing, right? And if you expand the aperture a little more and you look at what has happened in Asia from 2000 to 2017, right? Last 17-20 years, this further proves the point of how Asia is becoming the epicenter of global trade, right? This shows you that from in these 17-18 years, when global trade was growing about 2.8x or 2.8%, the Asia inter-region trade grew almost at 4x or happened at 4x. So it was almost growing at 1.5 times the global rate, global trade. And hence this brings us to the fact that what does this all mean, right? In the pre-COVID world, when people were talking a lot more about trade disputes, and that was affecting their thinking, right? People were beginning to talk about risk and resilience because everyone has seen on how US and China had played trade wars for so many years. And the third was that there was almost these board level talks on saying, okay, what is our sustainability footprint? What is our carbon footprint? And what we have seen this is a dramatic shift in the post-COVID world, where some of these trends have got accelerated significantly, right? So as people think about supply chain networks, digitization and automation has it's no more a differentiating factor. It's even for supply chain companies and logistics companies, it has now become a par thing to have. If you're not digital, if you're not automated, your ability to compete and your ability of supply chains to be resilient is significantly lower, right? The second is about supply chain resilience is no more a good to have, right? It has become the #1 topic of discussion across the board. And third is on sustainability as well, right? Companies are now announcing net zero sustainability goals, and I'll talk a little later that it is no more a corporate social responsibility. Sustainability choices are driving business, and we have some of the fact points to prove that how this is actually driving revenues and EBITDA for companies. This is again, so these are the key trends. This is what I was trying to refer to in the earlier stage. So to us, as McKinsey, when we look at what has happened post-COVID, I think 3 things, if you have to walk away from today's presentation, is for supply chain executives is resilience. How do you think about making the supply chains more resilient? How do you make them more digitally and tech enablement? And this word has also been used so much, almost abused of technology and digital enablement. But I have specific areas of tech enablement that are going to help. And of course, last is sustainability, right? The first one is resilience, right? When people think about resilience, we feel it is important for the executives and the CEOs and CXOs to realize what are the vulnerabilities in the supply chain, right? Because you will make your supply chain resilient to those vulnerabilities. And we think there are 7 types of vulnerabilities that you should be prepared for, right from, some of these structural things like global exposure, how much am I reliant on China versus one other country, things like climate change, things like national events that could happen, which is politics, terrorism, etc. Right? Then you go to organizational maturity, reputational risk. There are a lot of operational risks, and most of the time we actually limit our thinking to operational risks because thinking about what if failures happen, or if the manufacturing performance of this is below, if the supplier performance drops. But this is one of the vulnerabilities. Then you look at financial issues. Your suppliers go bankrupt overnight. What do you do? Is there a way to think about it? They have poor liquidity and hence they can't invest. They are not investing right into their equipment, which might affect reliability and hence might affect your supplies. And then there is regulatory, of course. You look at what's happening in China overnight. Some of these sectors lose trillions of dollars because of one policy that comes across, right? Some, right from video games or from education. The entire sectors in China have lost trillions of dollars because of certain announcements by the government. And then last is data security, which has become a big thing, right? How do you protect your customer data, and hence inefficient data protocols is important thing to look out for. So these are some of the vulnerabilities that the executive should be aware of. Now you look at what needs to get done. I think when we did and asked about 600 executives on how do you think you can make your supply chains resilient, and you see the 2, 3, 4 big reasons are about how do you dual sourcing, not rely on a single source of supply. We used to more inventory of critical products. I think a few months, in fact, almost a year and a half back, we had written an article in the newspaper to say how just in time is becoming just in case, right? So you're not storing inventory to save to make sure it's just in time, but protecting supply chains and ensuring that they run, and hence the philosophy is just in case. That just in case you need a material, you should have it, right? Nearshoring, regionalization, SKU rationalization are some of these things which will help you make more resilient. I think the important thing, again, the number here is important, that overwhelming number of supply chain executives are feeling that it is important to create that resilience. And to me, the next number is even more damning, to say when 44% of these guys are saying, look, I would take the initiatives to increase the resilience, even at the cost of short-term efficiency, even if it means that I will have some shocks in the 1 to 3 years because I'm getting new suppliers or I'm shifting supply chains, etc. Almost 50% of the executives are willing to take that disruption for the long-term benefit. Okay. We've spoken about resilience. We go to digital and tech. And as I said, when we spoke about digital and tech, we think there are actually 3 specific areas which have the maximum return of value in terms of investments that you do in digital and tech. The first is autonomous planning. In our experience, when I also serve a lot of companies, this is the area which is just left to some of these things like SAP or some of these off-the-shelf available softwares. But this is not about software. This is truly about how do you start with the most accurate forecast, and which rolls back right from production planning to supplier planning to inventory planning, and then goes on to dispatch planning. How do you do that integrated planning? And that's not enough. When the forecast changes, right, almost on a daily or a real-time basis, does your supply chain have the ability to shift and optimize on a continuous level? Right? Can it do that? Is the real question, and that's where we have found the maximum value gets unlocked through the digital and tech enablement. The second big area about enablement is the plants of the future. How do you make your plants most efficient and reliable using the best tech, best sensors, Internet of Things? Is the way to think about plants, right? Now plants are running at unbelievable efficiencies and reliability. And then, of course, the last thing is about the fulfillment side of things. Your supply chains have done the planning, the plants have produced the material. How do you make sure it reaches the customer in a very efficient way, in a transparent way? I think the interesting thing that we always tell people is, before COVID hit, it was important. The transparency of where the package was important, right? I think after COVID, even the customers are demanding the transparency of who touched the package, right? So because if there is a personal issue with some individuals, is there a way to isolate them? Is there a way to identify which packages got which hands? And hence this fulfillment side is also a very critical area which requires digitization in that sense. And then we go to the last trend that I was speaking about is about sustainability. And I said, to me, this is absolutely not about corporate social responsibility. This is about what will drive business. And if I tell you three numbers, right, which is a survey Nielsen did of global consumers. About 81% of the global respondents are saying that it is extremely or very important for companies to improve the environment, right? So people are thinking about it, right? You go next level higher, and 73% of global consumers are saying that they will change their consumption habits to reduce their impact on the environment, right? And then you go one step further and say 30% of those are saying that they are ready to pay a premium on the environmental products or environmentally safe or environmentally sustainable products. Now, to me, that is a significant amount of your consumers telling the companies and the brands to be more sustainable. Like it is no more a good to have or something that you can talk of and spend 1% of your money on corporate social responsibility to make it sustainable. And I have two other charts on this, which tells you, like, at least for two sectors where we looked at the product basket, the premium on sustainable products is almost 3 to 5x of the normal products, right? So there is business sense in driving those decisions rather than anything else, right? Let's keep going in. And hence, look, that's all I had. That was a quick presentation to leave the future, the supply chain of the future in our minds is that has the ability to respond or has the flexibility to respond to disruptions within hours and do that in a very environmental sustainable manner. That's how supply chains of the future would look like to us. Thank you so much. This is all I have.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanish, for your wonderful presentation, giving the latest trends in supply chain. You spoke about three important points. I think that's very, very fundamental now that all the changes are happening. I'm sure the supply chain resilience, which everybody is talking about, and the actions that companies are taking to build this resilience. So you spoke about the digitization trends, especially the three trends that you called out, and also how sustainability is no longer can have or good to do, and being a major driver of business. And an interesting insight is how consumers are willing to not only demand but pay a premium for it. I think these are wonderful insights, at least to me and many of us, I'm supposed in the audience. I'm sure that as we go by, there will be discussions around this, and maybe if there are any questions that come up on the chat, we'll address it at the end of the program.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you very much, and interesting presentation.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you.
Would I now request Saurav Goyal, Managing Director, Just India Supply Chain, to deliver his address. Over to you, Saurav.
Thank you, Shankar, for inviting me and giving this opportunity. And thanks obviously to CII and CII Institute of Logistics for organizing this conference, which is very useful and topical. I will, the comments and the address from Hanish was obviously, bang on and brought out the need for supply chain resilience and the whole external environment, how that is changing. And therefore, the overall need for supply chain resilience and how that is driving further the need for digitization and obviously customer centricity, right? And I will just take it on from there and spend about 10 minutes sharing my view and our view on how things are happening in the business environment, which is having a direct impact on how supply chains or supply chain leaders or supply chain organizations have to rethink how they work and how they have to re-architect their goals and objectives, right? And that's what I'm going to sort of talk about. So the theme of the conference itself is around profitability, real-time visibility, customer centricity, right? And how in the new supply chain normal, these objectives or these directions are going to play out, right? And like Hanish already said, right? I think last year and a half has brought home the idea that there's massive external change happening. which may be not directly business change, because COVID is not directly a business change, it's not a policy change. It was an environmental change or a hygiene, social change or healthcare ecosystem change. But then it has major impact on how business is run, and it also has an impact on how different businesses practices, like whether it is dual sourcing, nearshoring, supply chain resilience, digitization, etc., are adopted, right? And therefore, when we talk today, and whenever we've been talking over the last 12-18 months, how supply chain resilience has become important, and how external change, both sort of controlled by governments or businesses or uncontrolled, is driving our objectives, is clearly sort of known to everyone, right? And the pandemic has only accelerated that whole change mindset. One other thing, over the last 6 months, especially in India, I think that we are beginning to see is that a number of Indian businesses have listed, right, and have gone for IPO, etc., right? These are very new kind of businesses who have built very new kind of business models, right? And I talk about whether it's a Zomato, etc. So many of them. We know the logistics environment. Some of the companies are thinking about going for IPOs, etc. Now, all of these companies are relatively new, built over the last 5-10 years, built on the idea of customer centricity, right? Taking up a customer problem and trying to solve that problem better than maybe what anyone else has solved it till now, or trying to solve it in a new way compared to however it had been solved. So the first fundamental idea is to pick up a customer problem and drive tremendous customer centricity. The second enabler to building these businesses is to look at technology and look at how digitization and technology can be used to deliver customer centricity, or to make or remake existing business models or create new business models, right? So customer centricity and digitization drive the business. And then, in many of these businesses, and traditional businesses are also beginning to incubate and look at the same type of thinking. The idea is that if you solve customer problem well and you use technology to create efficiency, operational profit will come. You don't really need to worry about operational profit today. If you keep solving, scaling, driving efficiency over a period of time, profitability will come. So what is profitability itself in the current context is getting revisited dramatically. And then there is a play between profitability today and value today for future profitability, right? So how do you even say what is profitability, right? And therefore you're creating potentially shareholder value today, right? Which is a trade-off for future streams of profitability, which you are sort of building out as you build these businesses, which are highly customer centric and highly digital, right? So as supply chain professionals, right? As supply chain professionals, as supply chain leaders, when in the past we've spoken about profitability or profitability being driven through the supply chain function, it has been a very cost-focused approach. How can we benchmark cost? How can we reduce cost? But in today's context, with so much flux and change, and also flux and change on basic logistics costs, right? The capacity change, shipping crisis that we've been speaking about, air cargo, domestic, so many things, right? I think ability to benchmark cost and drive cost change on a unit basis has completely almost gone out of the window. It has now become a function where you really have to work, partner with business, see how you can enable, re-enable, reimagine the business model itself, be dramatically customer centric, and use technology to drive that centricity, and over a period of time, then as you build and scale those models out, bring out profitability, right? And that's something that we've been seeing, and we've been seeing customers, both traditional customers as well as sort of new age customers, looking at that sort of mindset, right? So that's something which I wanted to talk about. The other thing which we see, right, is that supply chain logistics companies, right, and we are a logistics company, right, our ability to partner businesses in delivering this transformational change, we have to rethink how we partner with businesses, right? Logistics service companies in the past have worked very transactionally with businesses or in a piecemeal approach, right? And said, okay, can I go into warehousing with you? Can I go into transportation with you? But because businesses are going through such massive change, and obviously their in-house capabilities and in-house technology readiness and resources to drive that massive change and transformation at any point of time is limited. Also, the talent available in the market to drive this type of change when so many people are trying to drive this change is also limited. Therefore, I think as logistics providers, there is a massive opportunity and a massive point of rethinking where how can we go and partner with these businesses, whether new age businesses or old economy businesses, as they drive scale or they drive transformation, and say, how can we help you drive on your agenda, deliver on your agenda of customer centricity, flexibility, agility, using technology, and also, because we are trying to do with a number of people, bring in the scale to be able to deliver more cost efficiency or cost control as you build these businesses out. So I think, from logistics service provider perspective, that is some of the opportunity or viewpoint that we see. Again, right, from a Justa perspective, the work that we do, right, there are couple of themes that we see sort of playing out, right, because we're part of an organization which is part of which is a massive supply chain ecosystem in itself, and is working very closely with the government over here as well in terms of the Make in India initiative, etc. Right. So two things that we see, and I think Hanish also mentioned about it, right. Supply chains getting re-engineered in the Indian context, Make in India, and more and more manufacturing as a country, we wanting to bring into India, right. And the second is, as you do more manufacturing, and also using more manufacturing in India, or also using digital marketplaces, whether it is B2B cross-border e-commerce or B2C cross-border e-commerce, right? Massive opportunity for India to drive exports, right? So as supply chains around the world get redone, India, one, trying to grow manufacturing, and two, trying to grow exports, both traditional economy exports in whatever sectors, plus also, exports changing from just being an old economy B2B environment to being a very digitally enabled B2B cross-border environment or a B2C cross-border e-commerce environment. Now, in both these cases, right, supply chain resilience is very important, first of all, right, because you have to be able to support your manufacturing plant and be able to create a supply chain which is integrated with global suppliers, right? And therefore, you have to have resilience, you have to have flexibility, you have to have digitization to be able to work efficiently and bring, critical parts in, run manufacturing, turn them around to be able to have the cost efficiency that you have to drive, right? So that's on the sort of Make in India manufacturing side and the need for resilience and digitization, etc. within that. On the export side, again, right? And we're seeing this, right? Shipping going through a crisis, containers not being available, air cargo not being available, and customers wanting very good clarity on, when their orders will move, whether, capacity will be available to not. And then in this whole sort of re-engineering or reorganization of supply chains, in this current environment, ability to service customer centricity and resilience will determine in certain cases where some of this allocation of this rebalanced trade will go, right? And therefore, if as India, we want to have a higher share, not only at an organization level, but also at a sort of country level, we have to be able to, provide for supply chain resilience, digitization, speed to market and flexibility, right? So those are some of the thoughts, that I have and, that we see in work on an everyday basis as we sort of go and, meet with customers, work with customers, and deliver programs and objectives. So that's what I had, and happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Saurabh. We'll come back to the questions at the end of the program. But certain very interesting observations you made, especially around the customer centricity part and how there's been a reimagination of business and how value for future profitability is being done. And you spoke about organizations like yourself, which is trying to see how they can partner with the customer, make a change to the business model, and deliver beyond the transactional value that normal companies which work in this field that way. So very interesting observations, and thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. May I now move to Aditya Gupta, Chief Operating Officer, Supply Chain Management Center, Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, to deliver his address. Over to you, Aditya.
Thanks a lot, Shankar. Many thanks to CII Institute of Logistics for inviting me to deliver this address. Warm greeting from my side to all the people who are attending this particular session. The theme of the conference today is visibility, resilience, and customer centricity in global supply chain. But I'm going to digress a bit and talk about one particular subject which I believe will have a very, very profound impact on global supply chain for next 2 decades. That particular topic, subject, or concern is sustainability. Hanish briefly spoke about sustainability, but I'm going to zoom in on sustainability. And for next 5 to 10 minutes, I will try to substantiate as to why sustainability is going to be critical for global supply chain for next 2 decades. We all know that in 2016, Paris Climate Agreement was signed. And in that agreement, scientists agreed that if you have to limit the global warming to 2 degrees Celsius, then the world and all the countries put together need to hit the target of net zero. Net zero is carbon neutrality by 2050. In the following years, several countries have committed to net zero. Sweden committed to become net zero by 2045. Germany, France, UK, Denmark, and several European countries have committed to become net zero by 2050. And they have not only committed, but they have built laws and legislations also around it. If you look at Asian countries, South Korea, Japan have already committed to become net zero by 2050. Very surprisingly, but last September, even China committed to become net zero by 2060. India and US are the only 2 large emitters which have still not committed to their years for net zero, but it is a matter of time that these 2 countries will also be committing to their net zero targets. Now, it is not only just the countries which are committing to net zero targets, it is the companies or the global companies also which are committing to net zero targets. There was a study which was done by Oxford University and a think tank based in London. And what they found is, out of the 2,000 largest global companies, almost 1/5 have already committed to net zero target. Last September, Walmart committed that they will become net zero by 2040. In November of 2019, IKEA committed that they will become net zero by 2030. This year, April, Burger King, Dell, Nestle committed to become net zero. This year, January, PepsiCo committed to become net zero. Johnson & Johnson, Unilever, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, BP, Shell, Apple, Vodafone, AstraZeneca, Rolls-Royce, Sainsbury, Aviva, Cathay Pacific, Facebook. I can take names of most of the companies which have committed to become net zero in next 10 to 20 years. And the most interesting part of it is that all these commitments have come in last 1 to 2 years. If you look at India also, several companies in India has also committed to become net zero. HDFC Bank, Tata Group, Infosys, Wipro, Adani Group, Mahindra Group, ITC, ACC, Dalmia Cement, and there are 50 other companies which have already committed to become net zero. Of all the companies, Reliance Industries, which is into petrochemical business, have also committed to become net zero by 2035. Now, for these countries and companies to commit or to pledge is the easiest part of the story, but the road to net zero is the tricky one. We all know when we talk about GHG emissions, there are 3 kinds of emissions which are there: scope 1 emissions, scope 2 emissions, and scope 3 emissions. The scope 3 emissions are the emissions which are related with value chain or supply chain. For some of the companies which are into consumer goods, the scope 3 emissions could be as large as 90% of their emissions. So all the global companies do realize that if they have to hit their net zero target, they have to do something very substantial about their scope 3 emissions. So most of these companies have started very actively engaging with their tier 1 suppliers. To give you an example, Walmart has started a project called Project Gigaton. Now, in this particular project, Walmart aims to remove 1 billion ton of carbon dioxide or 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide from their value chain in next 10 years or by year 2030 by working with their suppliers. Johnson & Johnson have launched a very formal sustainability program with their suppliers. Now, some of these MNCs are even redrawing their agreement to include sustainability related clauses in the agreement. ESG norms are becoming part of the vendor evaluation criteria also. And these companies are right now engaging with their tier 1 suppliers, but it is a matter of time that it will percolate down to tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers as well. Most of the engagement which is happening between the companies and the vendor at this point of time, I would say are exploratory or advisory in nature, but it is just a matter of time that these global companies will start tightening the screws and stop working with any vendors which is not following or adhering to social or environmental standards. Now, what does it mean for India or Indian companies? As far as India or Indian companies are concerned, we are either, or Indian exporters are either tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 suppliers to all these global companies. So if Indian company do not do anything or do not build ESG capability, then we run the risk of losing this game of global supply chain. There was a report which was released by Standard Chartered Bank about a couple of months back, and that report said that Indian companies or Indian exporters can lose business worth $274 billion if we do not curb our emissions. This another report which was released by an organization called Carbon Disclosure Project, and that report said that Indian companies will lose business worth 7.14 lakh crores if we do not mitigate our carbon emissions. At the same time, if we do a good job of carbon mitigating, then new opportunity which are worth 2.9 lakh crores which could emerge for Indian companies. Now the reason why I am highlighting this is that I believe that in 2021, we are almost at the brim or we are at the cusp. It is almost the end of the middle overs and the slog overs are about to start. If we do not act now, if we do not score runs now, we run the risk of losing this match of global supply chains. At IIM Bangalore, we do realize the importance or criticality of sustainability in supply chain. So we are in a process of setting up a dedicated lab for building sustainability in supply chain. This lab should be ready in next 3 to 6 months. And I would urge all the people who are listening to this particular session to take benefit of this particular lab. To conclude or to summarize, I would say that sustainability is going to be of critical importance in coming times, and I would urge every supply chain leader to really focus on this subject. Thanks a lot, and thanks again to the CII for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. A very, very interesting topic and very current, relevant, and important topic you took over. And you zeroed in on it. And, all of us are talking about ESG a lot these days. I mean, the world is changing. The investment climate is changing. I'm told there's a premium in the market for companies which are more sustainable from a shareholder point of view, investor point of view. And you talk about not only nations, but how the top 1,000 companies are kind of making their own commitments, and you called out a few very good Indian companies. And I'm sure that Bangalore is going to be the cutting edge of, coming out with your lab. And I'm sure the audience and many organizations in India would take advantage of that in their sustainability goals that they need to sign up, agree. But the most relevant point I found very interesting is we are talking a lot about how do we make India China +1, or how do we move global manufacturing into India. A lot of PLI schemes that are coming out from the government. But if we are not going to be in this sustainability, and as suppliers, we would nowhere be in the race. So I think it's a very relevant point. Thank you for zeroing in on this and bringing your valuable insights. I'm sure that this will be a very good starting point for all of us to dwell on this subject further as we go during the day. Thank you very much, Aditya. Very nice and
Thanks.
topic. So we are coming almost to the end of the morning session. And may I now request Anil Arora ji to give your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Am I audible well?
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Sir, first of all, thank you very much for chairing this session and taking the time out. Your insights into other speakers' views and your own views are valuable to the community. Many thanks to Hanish Yadav, partner McKinsey & Company. Your deliberation on how frequent shocks have eroded annual EBITDAs and we have to rethink investments were very enlightening. I would also like to thank Saurabh, my old friend. Jasta and Saurabh have been doing very good work in supply chain. And I think your deliberation on how not a business event has changed the way that we do business was very, very insightful. And thank you very much, Aditya ji, for linking supply sustainability to resilience and to the way supply chains will have to think in the future. My own 2 bits is that if you just put the 3 addresses in perspective, they're all connected. That how frequent shocks have made us rethink supply chain from a start and are forcing us to make de novo investments. Also, when we make investment, we redefine profitability. That came out very, very nicely in Saurabh's deliberation, that the definition of profitability has to change, because if we are talking investment and sustainability, we can't have the same per unit cost profitability and silo thinking on all the various aspects of a supply chain. We have to think in totality. Thank you very much, all gentlemen. As the last bit, as I chair the MOVE membership in CII, I have to do my bit to ask you more and more people to join in the MOVE membership, where already 75 plus companies have registered. It's an intelligence sharing platform primarily, and there are various sub themes to the platform. I'm sure Dr. Bhanu and other people from CII will make you aware. We are there on the CII Institute of Logistics website also. I would also like to thank McKinsey & Company for being a constant partner in intelligence with the CII Institute of Logistics. Aditya, Noot, Mr. Noot Alike, Hanif, Mr. Ganeshan, everybody has been contributing a lot to our events. So thank you very much, McKinsey & Company. And not to forget the people who make it happen: TVS Supply Chain Solutions, Armstrong, Hair Technologies, Mahindra Logistics, Logos, PCI Supply Chain Solutions, ATIS Digilog, Safe Express, and Freight Systems, who've been constant supporters to CII Institute of Logistics through the ups and downs of last 2 years. And I finally wish Global Supply Chain Summit 2021 a grand success. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you very much. And thank you for talking about MOVE as well. It's an interesting platform, and I'm sure all the audience are going to become members and benefit from that. So we are bang on time, 10:55. 5, and we are taking a break now. We will reconvene at 11:30 for the next session on reimagination of profit maximization in supply chain in this era. I'm sure you'll have a very, very enriching session over the day. Thank you very much. And that's the end of the first opening session. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.